Okay, this is one of my absolute hands down favorite topics. I love getting into it. I love talking about it. I love answering questions about it, around it, but also from it. It's where a lot of our practices, our we space relating practices come from, but it's really a deep part of one's spirituality. So for that very reason, I'm sure I'll talk about it again. Definitely throw a comment in below. Definitely ask me some questions. Let's start the dialogue, right? That's what this is for, a community conversation. So the topic is simply surrender. And I love this topic because when most people think about surrender, the first place they go to is the raising of the white flag, I give up. Because that's how it's portrayed in movies, right? If we surrender, we give up our power, our momentum into somebody else's momentum, one army to the other army. And in a way that's very true, still on a very personal level, but you have to understand what personal level means. So surrender isn't giving up, it's giving over. Big difference, huge difference. So here's the thing. If we're ultimately awareness, just pure and utter awareness, then I have been in surrender since the day I was born. Pure awareness is expansive, it's open, it's powerful, it lives and revels in the now. But that pure awareness, which I believe are actually more than awareness, I think there's actually power and force to awareness as well. But that gives over its power and force to this little baby the moment it's born. We start giving over into how the world works. The moment we're born, we start getting culturally educated, aka programmed, aka we differentiate into a human body. If awareness is all one thing, then we start learning that we're an ego. The issue is the awareness can really think that it's the ego until it breaks beyond the ego. And I say this because all of the time when people say they don't want to surrender, you're already surrendering. You're surrendering to who you think you are, right? Since I was young, I surrendered to this idea of Tom. Then at some point I became Thomas, and I surrendered to that. I'm still surrendering unconsciously to my own limitations or patterns or habits to the way that I think Thomas is. Yet at some point in these practices, we realize that I am something beyond just this physical makeup, beyond my patterns, beyond my thoughts, beyond my energetic vibration. And we surrender to something else, right? When you're doing a lot of your healing work, you're surrendering to different parts of yourself. There's the outer Thomas, and then I can also surrender to the inner Thomas. I can surrender to a higher Thomas. I'm a parent, so I can also surrender to kind of the will or the consciousness of my family. We surrender often to community or cultural consciousness. That's also a part of our programming. We just fall into it. We enable that to guide us and lead us rather than coming back to this sovereign space. And there's even a way that we can surrender into what is way beyond our knowing, right? However you call your higher power, we'll just say divinity for now, whether you're religious, not religious, spiritual, however you're going to conceive or however you believe that, we can also surrender to that greater power that we're still a power of, or we're still woven within that. It's not outside of us, but we can surrender that big. Some people I know believe that God has a God, and you can surrender to that. So surrender has so many levels, all the way down to the very personal, all the way up to the most intrapersonal or non-personal, and that's full awareness itself. We don't ever really get rid of our ego. We just learn to navigate where it doesn't own us. That's really, I don't know if people always realize it. When people talk about the death of their ego, you don't get rid of your ego. I'm always going to be Thomas until this body dies. Thomas is still living and needs to be Thomas living in the world. I'm designed. It's like a pencil trying to live as a pot. If I tried to like get rid of my ego, so I can live through my ego, but I can surrender in any given moment to any level of consciousness, right? And that's surrender. That's surrender. That's us when we get out of the way. You know that phrase, we get out of the way? That's me surrendering to something bigger than just myself. And it doesn't go straight to God. There's family, there's your close circle, there's your wider circle, there's your community at large, there's the town that I live in, there's the state that I live in, right? There's all of these levels that we can surrender into, and it's in a way not giving over my power, but giving my power to, or my attention to. What will I listen to? What will I follow? Right? There's a way that my tongue would love a piece of cake right now. Absolutely. No doubt about it. No doubt. Actually, like a Bavarian cream donut. Ooh, my mouth would love that. But the greater whole of my body and my energetics, not so interested. I'm going to love it. Then I have a sugar crash in whatever, half an hour or an hour. Then I'm going to want more. So I can surrender to what my mouth wants in any given moment. And we see kids do that all the time. They're like, I want that candy. Right? But then there's those kids who have a little bit more emotional intelligence. They're like, okay, well, my parents said if I wait a day, I get 2 candies. So I'll wait a little bit longer. But at some point we break away just from what our tongue wants or our gut wants. And that surrender or giving over to, or choosing to listen to, can become greater. I can listen to what the whole of my body wants. And actually a piece of cake won't feel actually great. Maybe it numbs out my emotions, and then I'll just have to process my emotions later. But it's a phenomenal understanding to recognize that surrender is what we align to. And I think that's actually the question at hand. It's not so much what is surrender. I mean, it's important to know that, but what are we aligning to? Because we're always aligning to something. We're always surrendering to something. Do I want to live in alignment with my tongue? Do I want to live in alignment with my body only? Do I want to live in alignment with the groups of people I work with, my one-on-one clients, my community? There's an alignment with them, which doesn't mean just do what they do. Surrender even in those moments means to stand up more for a truth that's coming through, even though it opposes everybody. Even though my mouth may want that cake, I'd be like, I'm not going to do that. I prefer to feel my vitality continue throughout the day rather than drop, drop, drop. So it's surrender enables us to live into different realms or different stages of alignment. And that, of course, grows with our ability to connect to it, which is in part related to our consciousness. Sometimes we're consciously aware of it, sometimes we're not. Simple as that. Consciousness is just bringing your active awareness to it. But it doesn't mean that we're already doing it. Some people, and I feel like I used to read about these people more like centuries ago, like young people would do a phenomenal thing. They would lead a country somewhere, or they would say something, they would do something that would be so uncomfortable for them, even condemning for them, but yet they guided the world somehow. I don't necessarily know if I see that so much in young people as much these days. But then again, when I read the past, I'm reading about not everybody, just a few people who have made differences. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about when we surrender to something way bigger than ourselves. It is uncomfortable. It's that moment where you feel like, shit, I've got to say this. Everyone's going to hate me for it, but I've got to say this. And you find yourself kind of holding on to your chair and you're like, I got to get up and say this. And you don't want to. It's your ego that doesn't want to. But a part of you that you're so aligned with, that you're so surrendered to in the moment, that you cannot not do it. That's surrender. Now you mix that with aliveness and life force and consciousness and sovereignty. And this is where we really start to skyrocket into the world of sovereignty and ultimate freedom. But that's not the conversation for today. But it will be down the line. Someone asked this question in one of my circling groups the other day is, what leads the leaders? Great question. Aliveness. Aliveness in part means surrender. And surrender to what? A leader will often be listening to the larger whole rather than just themselves, but they're listening to themselves to hear it. That's the interesting thing, is you can't exclude yourself as a leader. You're a part of it. When you exclude yourself as a leader, I would contend that you're not even a leader. You're guiding yourself for your own individual gain. But surrender is inclusive, because ultimately awareness is utterly inclusive. And if we are utterly awareness, we're always in some stage of surrender. Sometimes, and it's not just one, you go back and forth all the time. Like sometimes I do want to surrender to my body. My body needs to work out. Or my body wants to feel good and I just dance. Or I need to go hit some nature. Even if it means not doing something for the collective, or even if it means my family wants to hang out and I'm like, yep, but I need to go hike so I can be present. I need to go spend some time in nature. These are my own ways of doing it. I surrender to that. So then I can surrender to something else. It is a constant dance. It is a constant dance, the surrender. But what I really want to get across is we need to get out of our minds that surrender is giving up and losing control. I would say it's the ultimate control. But it's not your ego that's in control. If you're afraid of surrender, it's that your ego's afraid of losing its control. That's it right there. But when you recognize that you are awareness, surrender is all we can do. Surrender is all we can do. We're these vessels. Love moves through us. Life moves through us. Surrender to those things. And it's a practice. As much as someone feels like they have found it, there's going to be more corners. There's going to be more dark caverns where we want to be in control. I want control over certain things. I want certain things to work out. I've got a vision for my life. What if I surrender to a vision beyond the one that I have? Ooh, there's some magic in that. It's probably going to include some things I don't like, because again, it's my ego feeling like it's out of control, or I'm forced to not like, or forced to do something I may not like. But therein lies another story. Yeah, therein lies another story. Oh. Yeah. But through our personality, beyond our individual programming, we arrive to something bigger, something whole, more whole. We become more wholly. We can operate as a consciousness, inclusive of myself, yet beyond myself. These are the varying stages of sovereignty. We can choose to let go. We're free to let go of freedom and be in a bigger flow. I wish you well. Throw down a comment. What does that come up for you? What comes up for you in that? I don't imagine it being a very popular view, but I have a lot of non-popular views. I'd love to hear from you. Until then, create a great day.